Hi, I'm Tim, and welcome to the very first episode of my bonsai journey. In this episode, I'll be giving you a guided tour of my very first set of bonsai tools, as well as the journey of transforming this ordinary garden hedge into this very tree. Let's get started. Alright, unboxing. Here we go. First up we have this Choji oil, and that is for oiling the tools, both the pruners and the cutters. It's definitely important to keep your tools in good shape and oiled up when needed. Next up we have the Kiyonal cut paste, and this paste is used for when you make large cuts off of trees, like branches, to prevent the tree from rotting, or just any kind of unwanted complications from leaving an open wound in a tree. You could kind of think of it similar to Neosporin for humans. These are some tweezers by the company Chopstick and Succulents. I wasn't sure if I needed tweezers, but in my research I did see some people recommend getting some nice pair of tweezers for those fine details. I ended up picking up this pair. They're nice and long with a really sharp tip, useful for grabbing small things. And next up is my starter set of bonsai wires. This is by Leaves and Soul. Comes with 5 diameter size wires from 1mm all the way up to 3mm in 0.5mm increments. It also comes with a nice little wire cutter. It's not anything fancy or special. I'll probably want to upgrade that in the future once I need to remove some wires from trees. But for now it definitely does the job and cuts through the wire like I need it to. It's a nice little kit for being around 16 bucks. Comes with a good starter set, so you can figure out which wire you're going to end up using a lot. From what I know now, I believe the 2 and 3mm I'll probably need to order some more of. So definitely not a bad starter set, and the colors add a little bit of variability and make your wiring a little bit more interesting instead of just plain black or gray. And so here we arrive at the big guns. First up we have the Wazakura hand-forged concave cutters. So these cutters were made in Japan, and that was an important selling point for me. I know that there are some quality Chinese-made tools, but in general the cheaper Chinese-made ones just don't perform as well or hold up over time. So I wanted to get a set that would at least last me for a few years until maybe I wanted to splurge and buy some really fancy ones. And finally, the main event, so to speak, the Hanafubuki Wazakura Bonsai Scissors, or shears. Now, technically, I believe these are more of the root pruning shears, but hey, they were $10 cheaper than the longer handle ones, and they perform just as beautifully. Maybe in the future I'll increase my loadout more, but for now I wanted to save a little money and go with just one pair that I could use on the different parts of the tree. I figure as long as I pay attention, keep them sharp, keep them clean, then they should serve dual purpose for cutting both the roots and leaves and small stems and things like that. And finally we have this Bonsai Garden Root Rake. And this is for raking the top layer of soil and freeing up and teasing the root ball so you can get the extra dirt out. The other side is just a single pointed little teasing tool as well, just so you have some variety when you're raking out your roots. And so I have this handy little toolbox that I bought and built from IKEA. It's really neat because there are 2 top compartments where you can store a bunch of tools, and there's this really cool flip open style where you can get inside and store some more stuff. The two top compartments fold out to add a little compact storage inside. Everything gets put together in a nice, tight, neat little package. Really works out perfectly for the amount of tools I have right now. And here's the final loadout with everything loaded in. And here we go, checking my display real quick, make sure I'm in frame. And here comes the first cut. So in my initial cuts, I'm just trying to sort of thin everything out. Right now it's pretty hard to see the branch structure underneath all of the foliage. And so by just doing these light little prunings of small growth, nothing too big to start with, no huge branches, no majorly old pieces are being cut off. It's all just new growth that's really close to the trunk, really close to the beginnings of the branches, to allow the whole thing to breathe a little bit more, so I can kind of see what I'm working with. And so here I've slowed it down so we can kind of see these bigger cuts. I'm using that concave cutter here. And the reason that cutter is so important is that when it cuts, the face is perfectly flush with the branch. So this way, it creates a nice, clean cut. Just like that. In this close-up view, you can see how I'm really just pruning the smaller stuff. Nothing too big right now, just the little things, the dead branches, the small stuff that I know will be getting in the way of the final design. Wasn't quite sure what to do with this branch. Again, just pruning the dead stuff, the small stuff, the things that are in the way of being able to see the branch structure of the tree itself. In bonsai, we're trying to create the illusion of a tree. So here you can see some of the damage that I've done so far. And updated view. Cut off a big branch there. And so now I'm basically just working my way down the trunk in order to expose the front of it so we can get a better view. With this, because it's planted in the ground, I didn't really have to choose a front of this tree. It was chosen for me. And so because I have the front here, I'm trying to expose that trunk and just be able to open up the whole thing so that you can really see the movement of the trunk as it spreads out from the ground. And so now I begin wiring. So one thing I wanted to call attention to with this wiring is the two-branch principle. As you can tell in this first wiring, I'm using one piece of wire in order to wire this first branch as well as the second branch right adjacent to it. And this two-branch principle will enable you to brace the weight and force of each branch against one another and will help keep your trunk lines clean without cluttering it up with too much wire as you wire more and more branches. And here I'm trying to pick what wire size. The black one was too small, and so I used this larger one, which I believe is 3 millimeters. Choosing the right wire size is a bit of common sense and just trying to see how thick the branch you're moving is and the wire size itself. It's a skill that develops over time with more experience and just working with material. So over the years, I actually naturally trained this tree by breaking branches and forcing them out of the way of the door. And that's why it has this sort of windswept pattern. I decided to really emphasize and work with that pattern in order to make a sort of cascade-esque tree. It's not exactly cascading because it doesn't go down past the baseline, but nonetheless, it is have that windswept style, I think. And now that about wraps it up. So this is the final result of the first trimming. I have done some things in the coming weeks since, but I'll be posting those findings in a later update. So just sit back and enjoy these nice silky B-roll shots of the finished tree. Hey, welcome back. So there's a few key takeaways I wanted to go over as a sort of a debriefing or wrap up to this first episode of my bonsai journey. First of all, I know technically this isn't a bonsai because it's not in a pot, but the point of this practice was to be able to gain experience in wiring and cutting and pruning and designing a tree in the bonsai fashion. And I think that I very much so achieved what I set out to do. I'm overall really satisfied with how everything turned out. The few key things that I wanted to go over that I really learned from this experience, as well as from various YouTube personalities, especially Peter Chan from Heron's Bonsai. Big shout out to him because I've learned so much from him already. So the really first key thing to note is don't be afraid to cut, as Peter Chan says. It's really important to get out there and not be too afraid of making cuts, taking risks, cutting things off. That's a decision that you make, and it will grow back eventually as long as you keep the tree healthy and vibrant and happy. Just be prepared to cut. Go in knowing that you're going to cut things and do it. Execute. Make the decision and cut it out and move on. And so this leads me to more of the design principles that I've learned so far that I tried to apply to this tree. So Peter Chan has this philosophy that he doesn't like to pre-design things too much to try and force the tree into a specific shape that he wants in his mind. He prefers to look at the tree and design it as it fits for that tree, because having too rigid of a design principle or methodology will focus your effort too much oftentimes and lead you to making the tree into something maybe it's not ready to be at this point in time. And so the way to get the best results really seems to be to just look at the tree, understand the tree, and see the design that's already flowing out of it, and just prune the tree down and wire it down into that style that already exists within it. And the final key note of this first experience is just, it's okay if you make mistakes. Everything will grow back in time. Understand that a lot of these really famous and beautiful bonsai trees are literally hundreds of years old. So one season is like a blip for any tree, really. These two principles go hand in hand. Be prepared to cut and also understand that it will grow back. Everything will grow back as long as you keep the tree healthy. In the few weeks since I've started, the tree has grown back a lot. There's been a lot more budding back. The ramification has caused the foliage to grow a lot more denser in the pads that I've tried to create. And it's really nice to see everything sort of coming to fruition. And all of these concepts that I learned through YouTube and books and things are starting to really cement in my mind. But I'll go over those in a future episode when we come back to this tree and see how it's grown since. But in any case, thanks for coming on this journey along with me. This is just the first step of many. In the next episode, we'll be visiting some nurseries. Maybe I'll give you an update on how this tree is doing. So stay tuned to see some really, really awesome bonsai and hopefully continue learning on this journey with me. So thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. It would help out my channel. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like button and leave me a comment below on what you've been up to. I've also been doing a lot of gardening lately. I'll be starting a new series on that. Do you guys have any trees? You guys have a garden? You guys into planting stuff? Now is the time. So get out there and get your hands dirty. It's a lot of fun and I have learned a ton. But in any case, that's all I have. As always, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next episode.